is my... Okay, so if it wasn't already obvious, we're going to talk about Bibles today. Hey y'all, welcome back to Let's Get Real with Taylor. Today I'm going to talk about a video that I've actually already done on TikTok forever ago. I want to say it was like 2 or 3 years ago, but I've already done this video on TikTok. But I wanted to make an updated version mainly because I know a little bit more now than I did. But today we're going to be talking about Bibles. More specifically, we're going to talk about Bible translations, my favorites, my favorite Bibles, study Bibles, reading Bibles, all that jazz. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. As a PhD student in psychology theology, I kind of wanted to talk about the things that I've learned and what I know about the Bible, because I have had the education. I've learned a lot about translations. I've learned a lot about why it was written, how it was written, the translations from Hebrew to Greek to wherever. I've been able to learn a lot about that, and I wanted to enlighten some of you guys who maybe don't want to go to school for that long and maybe are a little confused, because I know there's a lot of mixed topics and mixed ideas and opinions on this. So this video is just going to try to help you guys out on that. So anyways, let's keep going. So I'm pulling up a Bible chart list on my phone, and I'm going to insert this list because you're not going to be able to see it right now. I'm going to insert this list either somewhere around here. Maybe I'll move for the list to go here, or I'm just going to offer just a clip of the list so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But I have a chart, and this is the chart that I recommend to absolutely everybody before they even start looking at Bibles. And it is a chart that explains to you exactly what that Bible is supposed to achieve, what kind of translation that is, X, Y, and Z, all that fun stuff. So I have this chart, so I'm going to pause right here, and I'm going to insert this chart, I think, right here in the middle of this, so that way you can come back to it periodically throughout the video. But I'm also going to have the chart pulled up and also a few notes on like each translation and all that fun stuff for myself. But I'm going to go ahead and insert that here. Before I even start talking about Bible translations and mine, because I have a ton. Oh my goodness, hang on, I can't lift them, they're so heavy. Okay. Oh, here they are. So before I even start talking about this big old stack right here, I want to talk about Bible translations themselves. So if you saw the chart, then you understood and you saw that Bible translations offer different experiences per different translation. So we have our word for word translations, and that is going to be NASB, ESV, KJV, NKJV, and TRB. Out of all of the word for word equivalent translations, the only ones that I currently read are the ESV and the NKJV. So ESV is the English Standard Version. The NKJV is the New King James. Out of the word for word, that's the only ones I read. So what a word for word translation essentially is a almost precise, almost exact translation of the original Bible. So if you don't know, the Bible was originally written in Hebrew. Of course, we know the Jews were Hebrew. It was then translated into Greek, and then I think it was translated into Roman, and then I don't know the progression as far as that goes. But I do know the original Bible was in Hebrew, which was then translated into Greek. So that's like the two original translations. Now, some Greek words and Hebrew words we don't have, like in our language. So we will use phrases or other words to kind of explain what those words truly mean. Because, when you're translating like any language, itself, it's really hard to get exact words for the language you're trying to translate to. So like different words have different meanings, as we know, and trying to translate, let's say, in Spanish, I remember we had feminine and masculine spellings, essentially, for words. Don't quote me on this because I don't exactly remember everything. But, we had feminine and masculine. And in English language, that's just not really something we kind of assign to words. So that's kind of what I'm talking about with like different translations. Another issue that sometimes we run into is people kind of forget that I said we don't have words that match up precisely. So sometimes those words will be a little different in each Bible. So they'll say, oh, well, the original Bible says X, Y, and Z. Well, yeah, it did say that, but we didn't have a word for that. So we created one. So that way it would be easier for us to understand. You see what I'm getting at? So the word per word translations are going to be the most equivalent to the original version of the Bible. Then we have meaning per meaning. And that is the GW version. I don't use this version. I don't know much about this version. And I don't use a meaning per meaning Bible necessarily, but that is the closest natural equivalence to the original Bible, if that makes any sense. Meaning per meaning and thought per thought, which is the next one we're going to get into, kind of go hand in hand. That's why I don't know much about meaning per meaning. It's not really something that I use, but thought per thought is the functional equivalence, and that is going to be consisting of CSB, NIV, and NLT. Now, thought per thought is a translation that uses modern language to convey the meaning of the original text. So it's focusing on the meaning of the text as a whole rather than the individual words. So it's not trying to find each word and getting each word 100% correct. It's more of trying to make sure the thought and of that sentence is fully present and fully represented. Whereas word per word translations is going to be the exact wording. And I'm going to kind of explain that as I go along with each Bible that I have. But like, in my opinion, a CSB or an NIV is a lot easier to read and understand because it is in a format that is easier for me to understand as an English speaker. But an ESV version would be something that has more filler words, is what I would call them, that are like exact definitions or exact like translations of the words that were in the individual, like the original Hebrew, Greek translation. So thought per thought is just kind of supposed to preserve the writer's like original meaning to the text without having all those filler words that makes it kind of like hard to understand. And the final part of this chart is paraphrasing, and that is just kind of retelling. And that consists of NIRV, CEV, and MSG. I don't particularly use any of these or like any of these really. I don't think we need to be paraphrasing the Bible. I think it's very, very important that each thought is fully understood. And sometimes when we paraphrase things, we kind of get into that. We could lean into our own understanding thing. And so I don't particularly use these, but they are also really easy to understand versions. Just kind of like thought per thought is. It is just easier for us to understand. And I think it's a great place to kind of start if you're kind of looking for understanding individual like stories and maybe meanings of certain books. Like if you're kind of trying to get the gist of the Bible, then that's a good place to go. But if you're really, really trying to like learn, read, and study the Bible, I would definitely go for a thought for thought or a word for word. Those are my two favorite, and that's the only translations that I personally use. A common question that I typically get asked when I'm talking about Bible translations in general is, don't they take verses out? Like, shouldn't we not be reading any other translation because they're going to take a verse out? And I wanted to address that today because I know that you've probably heard it. And as somebody with education in the topic, I thought it was very, very important that I spoke on this. So, when talking about the idea that the Bible removed, or that people removed certain verses from the Bible, usually their first thought is, well, that translation is wrong. That is not correct. So scholars, this is something I actually learned in my master's program a while ago. But scholars actually have kind of figured out that some modern Bible translations are omitting certain verses present in older translations, usually because scholars have determined that those verses were not part of the original text based on an analysis of the ancient manuscripts, leading to the discrepancies between different Bible versions. And that is straight from a textbook. So basically what that really means is that some of these verses were kind of added in there as like extra explanation, or like maybe to kind of help out the verse a little bit. And ultimately, scholars, after years and years of studying these languages, have determined that, hey, that actually wasn't in the Bible. We're going to take that out. A lot of times, too, in these thought per thought Bibles, they will combine ideas. That's a very common thing to do. So when you see a verse taken out, you're seeing a thought combined. So that's why I always recommend studying with like a New King James Version or an ESV, something that is word per word with your thought per thought if you're going to study it rather than just read it, because that helps you kind of see the original language and see how it was originally supposed to be written, understood, all that stuff. But you're also reading it in a way that you can personally understand it, because sometimes those King James versions, New King James versions, even the ESV can get a little confusing. And that's okay to be confused, because I used to be very confused. And I've kind of learned that, hey, the Bible has to be understood before you can fully hear and see God like working in your life. Because if you're not understanding his promises, if you don't know them, then that's when you get into this situation of these false ideas and these false truths that you think about God that truly aren't true, or these false ideas that God is supposed to do this for you and that for you when he never promised that, but you misread it because you didn't understand. And that's okay, because sometimes that happens, but we have to be prepared and we have to kind of study and read it. So verses that actually I have studied that have been omitted are Matthew 17:21, Mark 7:16, and Luke 17:36. Those are three that I know of that I've studied personally. And there's many others. There's not many, but there's a few others. And they might not be in the newer translations. And that is, again, because some scholars have been like, hey, after actually intently studying this, we see that this was never there in the first place. And these guys just kind of messed up a little bit. That's okay, though. We're going to fix it. Does that make sense? Like, I'm trying to make sure that you understand that they're not leaving out verses, and God's word would never be printed with a verse left out, because as we know, God would not allow something like his word, something that's going to teach us and to feed us, to be printed and produced with this mass publications of just falseness, right? He's not going to allow that to happen. So even those scholars that did mess up the first time, like, the idea was still there and it was still printed. You know, God's not going to allow something to be put out that doesn't encompass who he is. And I think that's very, very important to note if you're talking about Bible verses and the removing of Bible verses. So now I'm going to get into the fun part, and that is my Bible collection. The first one is this Jesus Bible, and it is an NIV version. This is what it looks like. I love the Jesus Bible. This is a study Bible. So what a study Bible does is it gives you context, it gives you understanding. There is some amazing writers in this that have put together little like blurbs at some paragraphs just to help you get an understanding of kind of what's going on in there. And also these writers explain where Jesus is during all of this, and I think that's so cool. But they talk about, you know, God's mission, and they kind of give you a little insight into the context of the Bible, which is so important when you're studying. So they also have like these fun little study things, which I think is so cool. And I want to show you the beginnings of some of these books, because the beginnings actually show you what the book is going to be about. So it gives you a timeline, it gives you what the book is about, where Jesus is in the book. It's actually very, very cool. So the Jesus Bible is actually my favorite one. This is what I use for school. This is how I study, and I think it's honestly like amazing. Sticking with this concept of the Jesus Bible, this is my ESV version of the Jesus Bible, and this is just the word per word that I was talking about. As you can see, she's been read through, but this is the word per word I was talking about. It's the same format, it's the same everything. NIV is just easier for me to understand, easier for me to like pick up on verses, and that's the context. That's what I need to put in this paper. Like that's just a little bit easier for me. But this is the ESV version, so this is a word per word version. I love to use this one and also my NIV together because they both offer really helpful insight, but you get to see the actual wording versus like the way we understand in English. So I think the Jesus Bible, out of like everything that I have, the Jesus Bible is my favorite. Another favorite of mine is the CSB She Reads Truth Bible. So the She Reads Truth Bible is a thought per thought Bible. It's more feminine. It has a lot of like little drawings, which I think is really cool. It has that information about each book, which I think is awesome. It not only has that information, but it also includes this little map at the beginning of each book and a little reading plan. So that's always awesome. This is more of like a reading plan or a devotional type of Bible, which I really, really love when I'm just like reading to read it, reading to connect with God, not really studying it, just trying to connect with God, understand it. The She Reads Truth Bible is amazing for that. Of course, it doesn't have all of the fun information that the Jesus Bible does, but it has different information because it's more personalized, it's more internal. It's really taking God's word and bringing it to you internally, like helping you understand it with little devotionals and things like that. So I love this She Reads Truth. Next Bible that I use quite a bit is this King James Bible. It's confusing, okay? Like if you don't understand Old English, you are not going to have a good time with this. But the King James and New King James versions are very, very important to have, I fully believe, because they are the most accurate. They actually are thought to be about as closely aligned with the original text as possible. Granted, there are some verses in here that maybe are not 100% in that original translation, like we don't think that they were actually there. You know, a lot of scholars can debate that how they want to, but I think it's always important to have a word per word, like a King James, New King James, or an ESV when you're studying, just that way so you can have like, okay, this is like word per word what this means, and then this is like the thought behind it and like the gist of it in my language. The final translation I'm going to talk about is my NLT, and this one I got from the Daily Grace, I want to say, and it is a journaling Bible. So if you've never had a Bible at all and you don't really know where to start, this is a journaling Bible. This is different from a study Bible. So a study Bible has, you know, all those fun little things that I showed you, which is literally the CSB one that I showed you and the NIV and ESV ones that I showed you. The journaling Bible is a little different. There's little lines in the margins. This is where we get creative. So this is very like, I can take notes in here. I can have my thoughts in here. But I can draw, I can be creative and just kind of wherever God leads me, like that's where I can go with this. And NLT is thought per thought. I think the NLT is a little bit easier to understand than the NIV, but I feel like the NIV is a lot closer to the original translation than an NLT. if that makes sense. So the NLT is the New Living Translation, and it's good. It's a great translation. It's a little different. Not a lot of people use the NLT, so that's why I don't use it a ton, because if I'm in church or if I'm at a conference and stuff, typically they're pulling from an NIV or a CSB, so that's kind of where I typically head. But a journaling Bible at all is great. I got this from the Daily Grace. Hosanna Revival has beautiful ones, and they're just great to get your thoughts out. A journaling Bible is one of my favorite things to have. So I know what you're thinking. I just showed you a ton of Bibles. I just explained a ton of stuff, and you're like, where do I start? So I'm going to give you the full rundown of the order that I purchased these Bibles. So the very first Bible I ever got was the Jesus Bible, and it was the ESV version. I wanted the ESV version because I wanted the word per word. Now, if you struggle with understanding sentences, and that is okay to do. We struggle with reading, can be hard. And so if you struggle with sentences and thoughts and things like that, the ESV is going to confuse you. It is only going to confuse you because it's going to have these words in there that are added fillers that are of course so important to the text, but they might get lost, and then you might start to get lost because you're like, oh my gosh, I see all these words and I don't understand what's going on here. So the next version that I would recommend is the NIV. I love an NIV. I love that thought per thought, but I love how it's kind of in the middle. And an NIV kind of sits in the middle of a thought per thought and a word for word, in a sense that the NIV is more centered around the thoughts and understanding the context in a language and in sentence structure that you understand, whereas the ESV is going to really stick to that sentence structure of the original translations. And sometimes that's really confusing because translation gets lost, and that's so normal. So those are my top two. The next one out of those that I would get is the CSB version, and that is the She Reads Truth Bible. That is one of my favorites, a great study Bible. Awesome if you struggle with reading and you don't know where to go, don't know where to start. Awesome if you need devotionals, but you still want a little bit of that studying, because sometimes the Jesus Bible is a lot. There's a lot of studying and a lot of extra added passages, and things can get kind of confusing, and that can be very overwhelming for some people. So if you're more along the lines of, I just want the word, but I still want those extra additives, the CSB She Reads Truth Bible is definitely where to go. Now, if you're somebody that's like, I don't want to study anything right now, the only thing that I'm concerned about is learning the Bible and reading it and hearing God. And if that's you, then I would go with a CSB or an NLT from Hosanna Revival, the Daily Grace journaling Bible. So not go for the study Bibles, go for the journaling Bibles. I think the journaling Bibles are so helpful and really easy to understand. And also it's a great creative place for you, a creative outlet if you need that. And especially as you're just learning to read the Bible, maybe you're looking up stuff on your phone, all that stuff, that's a great place to go. At the end of this video, I'm not going to only insert the chart that I had used, but there's another chart that I had previously found that I found to be very, very helpful that I'm going to also insert, so you can kind of see word per word, thought for thought, paraphrasing, kind of understanding the whole aspect of what they are. So I'm going to insert both charts at the end of this, so that way you can look at them both, observe them both, kind of see where you want to go. And I hope this was helpful. If you have more questions, or you're like, Taylor, that didn't make any sense, I need you to explain some stuff to me, I have no problem with comment your questions, and I will try to answer as many of them as possible, either in the comments or I'll create a new video for them. Whatever is more helpful for you guys, that is what I will do. But then again, I'm going to have these charts. I'm going to have, that's my explanations of all my Bibles. I'm going to try to link all my Bibles down below in the description, so that way you guys can see them. And kind of see where I bought them. I buy a lot of them on Amazon, so I will also link my Amazon storefront, because I do have a list of all of them there. You can choose or choose not to use the storefront. It is fine, but the list is there, and there's a ton of them on it. All of that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was so helpful for you guys. And if it wasn't, I'm sorry. I can definitely be more and more helpful. If you just comment your questions, I would love to get to them. Like I said, I have a PhD. I'm currently getting my PhD in psychology, theology. I have a master's in Christian ministry. And so I've kind of learned a few things over the years, thankfully. I've been able to learn these things, and I'm really excited to share these things that I've learned with you. So if you like this video, please make sure to comment down below, like, and subscribe. I would love to have you guys come on this journey with me and be friends with me. I know I haven't posted a video in quite a while, and I'm sorry for that. I got really, really busy. Passion happened. Then I had to take my youth kids on a trip, and I just got so busy. School started. It's been kind of hectic over here, but I'm going to try to get more consistent with this. This is very new. This is a new platform for me, as you guys know. I'm going to try to get more consistent with this. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for staying and sticking around through this whole thing. Really does mean a lot. Like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you guys in the next one.